Awesome, everybody. Let's get this thing all live in all the places and make sure that that's correct. It looks good to me. Instagram. That's the place I have to always make sure works. What's up, everybody? What's up? I think we are locked and loaded now. All right. Good evening, lovely viewers, and welcome to another engaging episode of the Know Your Pharmacist Livestream. I'm your host, Dr. Joaquin, Acosta, CEO of PharmTrue, here to navigate the verdant landscape of medical cannabis with you guys. Tonight, we delve into the tangible steps towards obtaining a medical cannabis ID card in New Mexico, unravel digital avenues for cannabis education, and explore the compassionate realm where cannabis meets harm reduction. We will also feature the enriching episode from today's High Horse Cannabis Full Spectrum podcast, where I am on with Bennett, Castro, and we are on every single week. It's a great podcast, shines on spotlight on also Buen Salud's remarkable contributions to our community as a medical cannabis card provider. They are one of just about the two providers here in town, and not sure how many out of the state that will get that certified and taken care of under your insurance. So excellent, right? Anyways, as we bridge the gap, guys, between tradition and science, let's embrace the leafy essence of wellness, cultivate understanding, and build a community rooted in empathy and knowledge. Our journey tonight is generously fueled by our sponsors, PharmTrue, High Horse, the Trichome Alliance, and Vado Speedway Park. So let's ignite the discussion, share the wisdom, and together trailblaze a path towards holistic well-being. Be sure to tap on all of the suggested things. Share this with any person that you may find it, helpful, because again, people who are paying tax for cannabis when cannabis is a medicine and should be treated as such, gosh, guys, we should really be sharing this kind of information with one another. And maybe it feels to some that it's a repeated bell, but we're going to go through a lot of good stuff today for sure. Cool. So jumping around. First things first, guys, the resource of how do you actually get a medical cannabis card? Have you guys seen this before? So this is not something that you're going to see in your doctor's offices, guys. It's not something that you're going to see available in many places. You may not even see it in a lot of dispensaries just because, it's just not something people always post as far as a resource. So I'm clicking on the screen here. Excuse me. Give me my 2 seconds of loading that on the screen. Yes. So anyways, how do you apply for a medical cannabis card or renew it through the online patient portal? Guys, we'll talk through these steps to go through it. We'll take a little bit of that long haul insight of, hey, how do you actually do this? What is the medical cannabis card? What is the New Mexico Department of Health, website for the patient portal and the whole thing, right? So it's actually cool because just as of recently, the New Mexico Department of Health has started creating content for providers, made by providers for providers to talk about some other things. So what I will actually go ahead and share with you guys later is the cannabis and harm reduction presentation by the New Mexico Department of Health. I thought it was a cool little value add presentation. Wanted to make, do a double audit myself and see what they were saying there as well. So I'm excited to get into that. Anyways, how do you apply for a medical cannabis ID card here in the state of New Mexico? This is the simple instructions, right? First things first, visit a medical provider. Then you go to the New Mexico Department of Health website, register, and log in for the online patient portal, and complete your application. Upload your New Mexico state ID or driver's license, sign and submit. So this is the general process for most people. Some people, the providers will help to do step 2 for them and do the patient registration, but I can't speak for every provider how that works for everybody. So generally, this is the step that you have to do. You actually have to go onto the website for the New Mexico Department of Health, where you're looking, patients and caregivers resources page, just sharing this with you guys. So Electronic applications can be processed much faster than the paper applications nowadays. And the cool thing again is that insurance can pay for that provider visit. So sometimes you'll see $150 to $200 to certify yourself to get that provider recommendation to get a medical cannabis card, and then pay a $50 state fee on top of that to register. So it can be a pretty pricey process up front. Granted, it saves you a year's worth of taxes, but that does cost a lot of money. So you want to try to, get your medicine covered by insurance, which is something, most people pay for. And what better way to do it than getting your medical cannabis card appointment covered by your healthcare provider? Your healthcare provider bills it for some sort of, behavioral health evaluation, so on and so forth. That's covered under your insurance. You don't pay a dime. You get a medical cannabis card, thus saving almost 20% each and every time you shop cannabis, so on and so forth. Not to say, our state couldn't use more tax money. I'm sure it can. I'm sure whatever money you give it, they're going to spend it, but it doesn't mean they're going to spend it properly or anything like that. So either way, it's more money out of your pocket. It is a medicine, and getting patients on board with how to understand, what you need to do to get enrolled, to know that maybe you've been putting it off for a long time, but maybe you are using cannabis. Hey, well, you really should be considering getting this covered under insurance, going through the Department of Health on the New Mexico Department of Health online portal, getting yourself signed up. There is an entire portal patient instruction document here. So I'll put it in the chat log here for you guys, so you guys can access the publication on that, and then as well as the patient website. So just want to make sure it's all about education. And I don't know why, for whatever reason, the chat glitches, but I will try to post that again. There it goes. I think it got it that time. So that's the patient page, and then this one will be the publication page. So this is the entire 17-page user manual of how patients can get on and enrolled into your medical cannabis card account on the New Mexico Department of Health website. So again, how do you do it? You go and create an account from here. This gives you button for button how you type it in, what you click, everything to go through it. Very, very straightforward. And granted, grandma and grandpa aren't, most grandma and grandpa, and maybe I'm assuming, are not necessarily the kind of people that will go all the way in, follow a step-by-step 17-page guide on an internet and plug and play that. So that's where caregivers and other people can be of great use to actually help advocate and make sure all this paperwork and stuff gets done right. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough, the provider will actually help you do it too. So you have to go all the way in there, access your account information, but it's nice that you can have your electronic medical card available from there, which is good. Obviously, you can save that and not have to log in every time. You can see what your sales history is in the state of New Mexico as far as the units you're using. And again, if you're a healthcare provider, it would be very interesting to see somebody's, units that they're using. Again, we do want to encourage people to shop at the dispensaries and not to do black market stuff, because you don't exactly know what you're getting. It's not regulated. Your doctor cannot, if the availability of information on cannabis right now is already limited and sparse as such, imagine if your doctor is trying to postulate about what's going on in your black market history. So let's not even go there. If you're going to use it, you got to get it from the dispensary, right? Got to get signed. I would highly recommend getting signed up with the medical cannabis card, getting that covered by insurance. Again, guys, you're not going to hear this from recommended from your pharmacist in most typical situations, because, right, pharmacists are working for corporate, which can ties their hands for talking about federally illegal things, and that's still just where it's at right now. So most people do want to protect their license and not recommend that. I don't have that problem, luckily, and so I want to make sure that everybody has the absolute ability to understand what they've got to do to get enrolled for a medical cannabis card. And, it's important. And we'll give you guys the resource here for, the providers in town that do it when they do it, that will get it covered under your insurance. And I hope, whether it's Georgia or whoever else, that those models will actually look at the same, because, healthcare providers are looking at, well, you're either about to go straight up into a cash-based industry and forget insurance altogether, which, who knows how long it's going to take to shape out, or stick to what you got, bill insurance, do what you're doing, the system works. Well, I get it. So there are not necessarily even workarounds, but I think there's just more awareness of how to, facilitate that for patients, get things covered for patients under their insurance, make it a realistic option without sacrificing your license. So again, especially private practice and things like that, you guys are in an absolute great position for, this kind of thing. Even again, as we were looking previously, skilled nursing facilities where the head medical director and the prescribing physicians there are the ones that have literally a protocol for how to get somebody a medical card, and then for how patients thus get medicine from there and keep it in their skilled nursing facility. So there's ways, for this to all work harmoniously. We haven't figured that all out yet. And that's why we're talking about cannabis today, guys. It's Wednesday. So either way, I got my high horse shirt on. We were in the podcast this afternoon, earlier this afternoon, doing the Full Spectrum podcast, talking cannabis every single week. Awesome. And, today I want to make sure that we get to talk about it all session long. So again, basis of this show is for education and advocacy. Nothing is for sale. So cool deal. Moving on, why cannabis for harm reduction? I thought this was cool because this was put on by the New Mexico Department of Health, and the New Mexico Department of Health is now starting to create resources for providers. So it sounds like somewhere the Department of Health figured out that our healthcare providers really, really don't know a whole lot about medical cannabis as is, and should probably get, a little bit more information. So they've got monthly forums now called the Cannabis Now Forum, which is now standing for NUGS, NUGS of Wisdom. This is the New Mexico Department of Health. That's cool. I think it's a little cheesy, but, whatever on the name. Either way, they've got some decent information. And, why cannabis for harm reduction? I think this is a great one, especially considering the city of Albuquerque, even to what Las Cruces is turning to, Espanola, oh man, right? So you're looking at things. What is harm reduction? Why do, people consider what harm reduction may be? Well, it's important to consider here because, look, harm reduction referring to a range of public health approaches designed to lessen the negative consequences associated with various human behaviors, both legal and illegal. So it's not to make that other perception about, hey, you're doing something so bad and you're hitting it, you're trying to hit it from the top side. Let's just lessen it, and let's not focus on the fact that, this is an illegal behavior, you're going to prison, and just zone in on one, association. So harm reduction, right, where you're trying to actually recognize how, something in terms of behavior needs to be changed, and working towards that so that people can thus positively still try to impact their own life, their well-being, and their decisions. So, I thought this was a good presentation, comparing and contrasting here harm reduction versus abstinence. So some examples: harm reduction accepts drug use, etc. It's a part of our world. Abstinence, drug use, etc. has no place in our world, right? Probably religious institutions are maybe a little bit more firm on things like this, wherever that, whatever religious things that they may be, not to put anything out there, right? But again, more traditional approaches, harm reduction may be considered more of a newer strategy, right? And zero tolerance and an abstinence, mindset there. When you have cannabis, it's a federally illegal drug. You should be locked up. You're going to hell forever, right? That's what it is in the abstinence tone. Otherwise, continuum, other ways are safer than others. You can find ways to reduce intake to reduce harm versus stop intake by locking them up and then put them back out, right? So again, examples of harm reduction: syringe access, overdose prevention, safer drug use, fentanyl, medication for opioid use disorder, Hep C, sex work, supervised consumption services, xylazine awareness, right? Why cannabis for harm reduction safer than the alternatives? Look at the alternatives, right? We don't have to say much there. Anyways, easy to obtain, safer alternatives, less adverse side effects, low risk for addiction, effective at relieving symptoms. Again, super, super good stuff. Almost impossible to consume a lethal dose of cannabis. Can't say the same for fentanyl. Can't say the same for methadone, right? Can't say the same for alcohol. Cannabis does not suppress respirations. Cough, cough, alcohol, cough, cough, fentanyl, cough, cough, benzos. Put them all together, you're not even able to cough because you can't breathe. And that's what's happening, right? So again, cannabis does not suppress respirations, right? When you're talking harm reduction, opioids lead you suffocation, right? Exactly, Papa Roach style. Again, alcohol, you drink too much, you'll get down that pathway too. And again, that would be a one-night situation. That's not like liver failure. So alcohol, benzos, adding those drugs together, those are things that pharmacists look at like, the absolute mortal sin of the world. We need to prevent those sorts of adverse effects. So this is our wheelhouse. You know what I mean? Cannabis is a miracle when you're looking at the other alternatives that are out there. It's insane, right? How can it help? Patient-driven, substitute for more dangerous substance, substitute for more dangerous route, treat withdrawal symptoms. Provider-driven, introduction, reduction, cessation, right? Look at this. Cannabis and heroin, a successful non-opioid medication, would add significantly to the existing addiction medication toolbox to help reduce the growing death toll, enormous healthcare costs, and treatment limitations imposed by stringent government regulations amid this persistent opioid epidemic. New Mexico, we suck, right? Albuquerque, we suck. Espanola, you guys suck, right? It's bad. Where can cannabis somehow make some sort of intervention, right? Cannabis and opioids. And this is the New Mexico Department of Health trying to feed providers this information. This is recent. This is literally last month. And so, again, providers need to get on board with this, right? Looking at studies from cannabis and prescription opioids, how does it do it? Cannabis actually does help to reduce the opioid use, which would therefore play a role in harm reduction in the role of opioid overdose crisis, potentially improving the quality of life of patients and overall public. Granted, it's preliminary data, but some people have to have some spine and find a way to get this figured out. Like, seriously, you can think about taking all those opioid doses in half, taking those people that may be on that path to opioid addiction and all of a sudden curbing it, giving them a healing substance. It's like, it is literally night and day. It's so insane there, right? Cannabis and meth. THC reduces meth-induced brain damage via inhibition of striatal and NOS expression by both CB1 dependent and CB1 independent mechanisms, inhibition of striatal and cortical astrocyte activation by CB1 independent mechanisms only. The extent to which cannabis may mitigate the adverse effects of meth is likely to depend on relative timing, dosage, context in which the true drugs are consumed. Again, Espanola, right? Albuquerque, wherever in Las Cruces too, but there's so many different kind of interventions that providers and clinics and even state officials need to be on the same board at. But I'm happy to see that New Mexico is talking, again, in the right way. Looking at cannabis and CBD here, right, with meth. CBD playing an antioxidant role against toxicity and oxidative stress generated by amphetamine. CBD may also provide neuroprotective effects and other neuroinflammatory mechanisms. CBD showed low additive risk as a substitute for meth. CBD lessened cravings and the potential agent reducing relapse. So again, you're thinking about inflammation that comes from meth, neuroinflammation specifically, CBD, very, very interesting, right? Cannabis and cocaine, period of intentional cannabis use to reduce use of crack was associated with subsequent reductions in the frequency of crack cocaine use among, PWD in Vancouver, Canada. So maybe crack cocaine and cocaine may or may not be in the same category depending on who you talk to. So either way, interesting enough, CBD could be efficacious in individuals with less severe substance use disorder or with demonstrated abstinence capability. So when I'm talking to healthcare providers, that we're not necessarily looking at cannabis as a harm reduction when it comes to alcohol, cocaine, meth, opioids. It really, really can be, right? And whether or not you're using CBD, THC, balancing it, and figuring that out, that data is not exactly there for how to go through the protocol, right? There is not exactly a treatment, but we can start working towards that. I really, really believe it, right? Cannabis and alcohol, benefit dependent on whether used as substitute versus complement, right? Substitute versus complement, very, very important there, especially when it's cannabis and alcohol. Both males and females drink less and were less likely to binge drink on days when cannabis was used. The use on cannabis during alcohol treatment is associated with decrease within day alcohol intake for both males and females, and among individuals who use cannabis frequently. THC content has significant impact on alcohol-related outcomes. So using higher potency products was associated with more alcoholic consequences. Drank more on co-use days among college students who use both. So, maybe CBD, or again, this is where we're saying substitute, not additive. Because if you're going to lower your inhibitions with alcohol already, you're probably just going to want to use cannabis. So that makes sense. You don't even have to think about that. But again, using cannabis as a means to not use alcohol, that's what we're talking about, right? So looking at the different kind of drug mechanisms of actions here, THC, cannabinoid receptor agonist, stimulates the motivational aspects of alcohol consumption. CBD, cannabinoid receptor agonist, suppresses the motivational aspects of alcohol consumption. Cannabis and benzos, right? Even still interesting. Within a cohort of 146 patients initiated on medical cannabis therapy, 45.2% of patients successfully discontinued their pre-existing benzodiazepine therapy. Wow, right? Again, the intention of wanting to discontinue has to be there, but that's a really, really good number right there. Discontinuing benzos. Study therefore supporting the continued research of medical cannabis and urging further exploration to therapeutic value. So even, lastly, nicotine. CBD inhibiting metabolism of nicotine, thereby helping tobacco users curb the need for the next cigarette. Single dose of 800 milligrams CBD reduced salience and pleasantness of cigarette cues compared with placebo. Again, very, very interesting stuff. CBD as a strategy to possibly help. Yes, as a pharmacist, we can prescribe for tobacco cessation here in the nice, beautiful, progressive state of New Mexico, right? So when you're looking at nicotine patches and lozenges and whatever other things are out there, maybe I would still consider cannabis probably on the back end, but if somebody wanted to put it in there, there's no reason to try it, not to try it. Especially those that are, dipping. I think it's an interesting concept because the mouth, hand to mouth sensation there, if you have a hemp patch, at least could perhaps really, satisfy a lot of need while still continuing to do this. But those patches do not really come in 800 milligram doses. So looking at pain reduction, prescription drug reduction, all very interesting. So these prescribers, we are trying to continue to educate, set up, get them all on the same page, looking at what the New Mexico Department of Health says. Takeaways here: THC has been documented to be rewarding and to enhance sensitivity to other drugs, higher abuse potential. Sure. I don't necessarily hold that to the highest regards. I think as prescribers, we know that, but we want to know also what things we want to use THC for. THC also affects your CB1 receptors. Your CB1 receptors are the most abundant G protein coupled receptor in the mammalian brain. You have millions of them. Prefrontal cortex, synapse, all of that. It's all in there. Amygdala. You've got millions, literally millions of CB1 receptors all in that location, which get upregulated when you're going through things like PTSD and other inflammatory measures, right? Pain, CB1 receptors will upregulate in many occasions, right? THC is the phytocannabinoid that, mirrors anandamide, which is the endocannabinoid produced in the body that interacts with the CB1 receptor perfectly like a lock and key. So where providers really should be thinking about it, and you're looking at inflammation, you're looking at PTSD, you're looking at spinal pain all up and down the nervous system, CB1 receptors are filled there. THC could be useful there. Worth knowing. That's worth knowing over this. I don't like this statement. This statement here in this is like a cover my ass kind of thing. So we're here for medicine, and then all of a sudden, boom, we have this on top. THC has been documented to be rewarding and enhance sensitivity to other drugs, higher abuse potential. Great. That doesn't help anybody anything. We already know that. It's a Schedule 1 substance. What does Schedule 1 mean? Anyways, CBD, on the other hand, appears to have low reinforcing properties with limited abuse potential and to inhibit drug-seeking behavior. The fact that CBD and THC have divergent effects on behavior have linked to addiction. Vulnerability emphasizes the important need to educate our patients. CBD's anxiolytic properties, insomnia benefit, and minimal adverse side effects support its viability as a treatment option for symptoms associated with drug addiction. So, again, depends on the context that you're talking about it, where you're talking about drug addiction. Maybe that THC could be more rewarding, and sure, you look at all of that, great. Maybe you look at balances and ratios, but in terms of this is the harm reduction lens, sure, I get it. So concerns with cannabis for harm reduction, cannabis use disorder, overdose toxicity, withdrawal symptoms may create more distance between patient and provider, all kind of in line with the rewarding effects parts of THC. But I think there's so much more risk versus benefit in so many cases. However, you do still have to have that care fully coordinated all around, right? So anyways, how to do it. As always, start low and go slow. Consider approximate time and place. Choose less risky products. What does that mean? Edibles that you can control the doses, high CBD content, low THC content, right? Use safer methods. Don't smoke. Again, utilize safer smoking practices if you are. Vaporizers, not vape pens, vaporizers. Reduce the amount and frequency of cannabis use. Avoid synthetic. Don't drive high. Have a plan for transportation. And don't mix with things like alcohol or other drugs. Granted, it seems to make sense, but at the same time, we want to make sure that everybody understands exactly what we're saying. So anyways, next segment here, guys, want to give you a little highlight to the episode today of the Full Spectrum Cannabis podcast. Me and Bennett had a great time on here earlier today. I will go ahead and put that in the chat notes for y'all. Make sure everybody gets a good watch on that for show. And then moving on to our community spotlight, wanted to go ahead and actually spotlight a local clinic here in town, Santa T, close enough, but Buen Salud does medical cannabis card evaluations. I work at High Horse. I'm the director of training there as well. So guys, you can get forms there at High Horse, fill them out, drop them off. They'll send them back over here to Buen Salud. Buen Salud also has their own online registration process. And again, talking about getting medical cannabis cards covered for free under your insurance with a provider who will bill it properly the way it should be. Buen Salud, boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Call them, right? Go to High Horse. You can get the form. That's the slower way. The faster way is going direct, for sure. Lastly, guys, Men's Health Minute. So we already contrasted this a little bit here in harm reduction, but this one I thought was important, just looking at cannabis and alcohol. And this organization here has some interesting takes here, but I do like some of the takes as well. I think it is a good resource. So let's look. Introduction, cannabis. Does use contribute to overdose deaths? No. Long-term health problems? No. Violent crimes? No. Serious injuries? No. Right? Alcohol? Yes, 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 yes. Granted, it's not black and white. You could probably say both for both ways, but again, data is probably going to support one way versus the other. And again, violent crimes. Incarcerated for possession is not a violent crime. So again, maybe in some cases, in the trade game, there might have been violent crime, but legalization really helps that, right, guys? So look in, I just think it's important to look here. Many people die from cannabis use. Many people die from alcohol use. Nobody dies from cannabis use, right? Alcohol overdoses, never been a fatal, cannabis overdose. Health-related costs associated with alcohol use far exceed those with cannabis use, right? Alcohol use is going to put you at all kinds of risk factors for all kinds of things, guys. Insane. Alcohol damages the brain, cannabis doesn't. Alcohol is linked to cancer, cannabis isn't. Alcohol is more addictive than cannabis. Alcohol use increases the risk of injury to consumer, cannabis is not. When you look at it community-wise, alcohol use contributes to aggressive and violent behavior, cannabis does not. Alcohol use is a major factor in violent crimes, cannabis is not. All supported with data here, right? Alcohol use contributes to the likelihood of domestic abuse and sexual assault, cannabis does not. So you look at that, where you look at mental health and you look at these things and you look at crime and you look at all these other things, men, guys, I think are probably going to be more likely to die from overdose, are going to be more likely to commit violent crimes, things like that, more likely to use alcohol even. So all to consider in the Men's Health Minute that cannabis may just be worth substituting sometimes, every now and then. And so that's the food for thought I'll leave you guys with today. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their hump day.